way. All right, so thank you for returning to this arena. And I just want to say Zelma has to leave in a little while, and Sandy will arrive in a little while. So probably they will replace each other at some point. I just wanted to, I guess, start where we left off with the new people introducing yourselves. As I said last week, the idea of moving back and forth between in-person, face-to-face, getting to know each other, and then writing seems to me to be possibly the creation of a new space. I'm a psychoanalyst. The space of laying on the couch kind of allowed you to separate from the and free associate and went to a different place. That's from half a century ago. We don't do that much anymore. But this also seems to me to have a different quality. Writing is regressive. We don't see each other. We project onto each other. We can call each other idiots on social media with impunity and get applauded for it. Facebook will, let our posts rise to the top if we're angry enough, But face-to-face, we tend to be nicer, more willing to be empathic. You're trying harder to understand. So I'm thinking about some way of creating an arena where we can move back and forth and maybe have some creative coming together emerge from that. So that's me. Why don't we start with Zelma, since you have to leave? You want to tell us something about yourself and why you're here and what your thoughts are about the project?
Yeah, sure. So my background, first of all, I'm Zelma. And so actually I live in Texas. I'm from Texas, a military child. So grew up San Antonio. I was robbed of the military experience as to I never moved anywhere fancy. So I was born in Alaska, moved to Texas at 1 and never moved again. So I genuinely feel robbed. But the past 20 years, my background is social work. So I'm a master's in social work. So started child welfare, dealing with adoption, foster care adoption. But then in that journey, began working with doing trainings with anti-racist training and just kind of discussing systemic institutional racism in various aspects of different systems. So it started with child welfare, the healthcare system, criminal justice, just kind of the education system. So various systems. And so through that, I was introduced to just various trainings that allowed me to have conversations with various people from all walks of life. And so conversations with judges, with police officers, attorneys, workers, advocates, parents, coworkers, to where really getting able to see just kind of different perspectives, and views of the world. And I think for me, just kind of the journey of growing up and maturing, right? So being a woman of color, being a biracial woman, being coming from relatively, I guess, like lower middle class, right? So there's all these different perspectives growing up that I saw the world in, all while being held to just kind of this collective identity, if that makes sense. And so in my work, just kind of the journey of me going through the phases of being a social worker in life, meaning that I'm an advocate. I will always advocate for, for the person that's in need. That's just always been my nature. And so how do I channel anger, fear, frustration, helplessness? How do I channel all these different things? And so over the years, just kind of learning how to dialogue with people that have different opinions than myself. But I think even more so, I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in my experience is just more so understanding human behavior and how all of us are really very similar, right? And more so how we all tend to want the same thing, but where we differ is how we get there. And how we want to get there is guided and dictated by our personal experiences. And so I went from having conversations of being upset because I didn't feel validated, right? I felt as if somebody is trying to minimize or negate what it is that I'm saying, And so I would get defensive. So then my response would come from a defensive nature that was rooted in my insecurities, right? And so therefore, any conversation or genuine conversation to be had, it was out the window, because now I'm reacting to the person, and then in return, then they react to us, right? And so then now it's two different issues, and it can't be resolved. And so I came to Alice's page through Tyler, who, and I honestly don't even know how Tyler and I became Facebook friends. I'm pretty sure it was a debate about something else. And I know he befriended me, and we've had conversations, and, we've actually had phone conversations, and it's at the point where it's just like, hey, we're just different, And so, and I think what I like about what you're doing, Alice, is that you're finding people that at the bare minimum, that's willing to listen.
Yeah.
Right. Because
Tyler is an extreme conservative.
Very extreme.
Yeah.
Yes. And but I also believe that he genuinely means well.
Yes. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. And because I believe his intentions are good, then I can sit down and have a conversation with Tyler any time of the day.
Yes.
And then the boundary piece is just like, hey, Tyler, I'm not going there with you. You're wanting me to answer questions that I'm not going to answer, and being okay with that. He may not be okay with me not answering questions, right? But I am, but I don't take it personal. And so I think that these conversations of being willing to allow people to explain what it is that they're saying, and whether we agree or not, just walking away and being respectful that I can understand why you see it that way, right? And so I don't agree. My experience is different, and it is what it is. And there's no love lost. It doesn't have to be this negative thing. So I enjoy just having that conversation. And I do believe we just lack respect as a culture. And I think social media kind of allows that. It allows people to say things that they wouldn't otherwise say in another forum. And so that's kind of why I'm here. I enjoy connections. I enjoy hearing people's stories. I enjoy understanding why people are the way they are, because that's what makes us us. That's what makes us unique. And not having a desire to change it, because at the core, nobody can change who I am. Right. And so therefore, I have to offer that same respect. So that's why I'm here, just kind of having the conversations and getting to, and then also for you, Alice, to kind of understand what is the method behind your madness.
Yes.
Right. And so you and I will kind of go
sort of
back
developing it as we go along, but I have the methodology in my head.
And I know that, right? And so I can come and I can read it and I can come up with why I think you are, but I don't know. And so it's that piece. So understanding your why as to why you're here, but then also just hearing other people's experiences as well.
Great. Thank you. All right, who wants to go next?
I could say something probably. I think this is your second meeting together. Is that true?
Ian and Sandy and I. Yeah.
Some are, some yeah. Yeah, I could not make it last week, but that's water under the bridge, saying goes. In the meantime, I had some kind of weird minor stroke last week, and I have permanent double vision. So I'm seeing with one eye closed. I'm not trying to be weird. I get patches tomorrow, so it'll do it. And I'm not sure what else you'd like to know. Do you want background of me? Is that what you're doing, or?
Yeah, just I guess, who you are, how you came to this project, something about your political perspectives.
Okay. Yeah, I came to it. Yeah, I don't know. It just appeared. And I said, gee, that sounds good. Because I always like to talk to people. I love meeting people. I live in Salem, Oregon, though I'm a retired pastor from Los Angeles. I've been up here about 6 years now. And I'm on the conservative side. And that happened. I was liberal. I was as liberal as you can get. Okay. And then I met Jesus and kind of turned me around a little bit on some of my thinking as I looked at what he said in the Word, in the Bible, and I said, okay, that's what you're saying, and this is what they're saying. I better go with what you're saying, because I realized I'm accountable, okay? And the accountability is to something bigger than me. And I think we all want to be accountable for something bigger than us. And many of us choose government for that purpose. But I know there's something in higher than government. And as I said, I just liked talking with people about finding out what they think and showing them that, conservatives are not evil. Much of the media and even politicians try to push that if you like Trump, if you're conservative, if you're a Republican, well, then you just have evil intent in your heart. You want to hurt people, and you just care about yourself and big business. That's a lie. Democrats get more money from big business than Republicans do. But in any case, I'm here to show you that perhaps there's another side to a lot of issues that are not meant as evil, but is meant as maybe I'm correct or incorrect. And a quick way of looking at something, of approaching a topic, or an alternative. Okay, and much of that will be based on our values. What are our values? And we have to go a little deeper sometime. And why are you doing what you're doing? Okay, not just what you're doing. Let's not be Machiavellian. And unfortunately, a lot of stuff in politics is. It's and that's one of the reasons we often feel that conservatives get labeled as evil, because once they're labeled that way and once they're drawn as evil, then anything you do to stop them is okay because you're fighting evil. Well, that's not right. I hope you agree with that. I'll let it go from there. Thank you.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. One of my biggest concerns is the way we demonize each other. Each side, we'll find some leader that's very extreme, very concrete, very powerful voice in some way, and pull people along until it becomes they are just either stupid, crazy, or evil with no redeeming features, and then we're stuck. Mm-hmm. I find myself, even on Facebook, if I ally with someone who's a conservative, it's like, Alice, you think that? How dare you? And then I suddenly have to, argue something that I'm not sure I believe myself, because people are accusing me of the mortal sin of understanding how someone else feels and saying, I get it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, Alice, again, is that we need a totally different space to live in. One that would allow for civility, would allow for common ground. And I love the idea, the design that you put together here of coupling the writing with the face-to-face. My only concern is that Zoom is the best face-to-face we can do online, but it isn't quite face-to-face, right? Because there are no bodies involved; they're just images on the screen.
Exactly.
And so the project I put together starting in 2012 was partially a didactic project of teaching a philosophical distinction between I, you, and I, it. That's Buber's distinction. If anybody else is familiar with that, I'll be surprised. But also coupling that with an experience of a different way of being together than the way perception allows and enforces. The perceptions that we have are based in the past, based on our past experience, and those are the rigid structurings of our experience and beliefs and practices that don't allow for the kind of instantaneous face-to-face personal connection that we all seem to crave. So I'm hoping to find some way of collaborating with your project that will expand both.
Can you describe your project? I saw a little bit in the email list.
Yep.
What do you actually?
So Meetings of Opposites is a curriculum of readings and experiences that's designed to produce the actual experience of common ground among people whose opinions or positions are irreconcilable. It has 4 components. The first of them is an investigation of the mechanism of visual perception. We have this old video, 1950s video of the perception demonstrations of a guy named Adelbert Ames. If anybody recognizes that name, I'll be surprised too. But these demonstrations show persuasively that what you see in front of you, what you actually are sure is in front of you, is an illusion. It depends on perceptions that you assemble from assumptions made on the basis of your past experience. And you follow that with examinations of local controversy, like the statues controversy in Charlottesville. That's where I am, outside of Charlottesville, where we're still hashing over what to do about the statue of Robert E. Lee. Or you can look at any online comment section, and it becomes clear that the same mechanism that produces optical illusions is responsible for the excitement and the commitment to position that people display in those online comment sections, in those controversies. The third element is a philosophical distinction that I mentioned earlier between I-you and I-it, Martin Buber's distinction between personal encounter and position taking, which is based in the past. And lastly, I added in some experiences, some activities adapted from Outward Bound, where I was a field instructor for a number of years. And I've got some little games, initiative games we call them, to bring into a classroom or a meeting session, which give people an actual experience of a different way of being together than, position taking. So the hope is to open this new space of being together. Personally is not quite the word for it, but being together in a way that is totally distinct from the ways of discourse and argumentation. I'm working on the word for the other space. The only way I've got to distinguish them so far is you is different from it.
Mm-hmm.
Have I said enough? Have I intrigued anybody, or am I long-winded?
I did find your website, so I'll definitely check it out a little bit more in depth.
Great, thank you. I'm looking for ways to set up meetings of opposites. My biggest difficulty has been in inviting pairs of opposed opinions, opposed positions into the same room.
That's the problem.
It is hard to get conservatives into this because it seems that conservatives are, as Tom says, demonized by liberal. It seems like dialogue is a liberal project to indoctrinate conservatives. And that comes out of the world of position taking opposition that I'm trying to set aside, draw a circle around and provide an alternative to.
So, and I guess for me, just a question. So then, is there a belief that it's conservatives that are demonized in a way that is specific to conservatives, that it's not experienced by those on the left?
Oh, I think the left is demonized in the same way. This
Oh, okay.
demonization is a feature of the space we live in. It's
Okay.
it's not anybody's fault. It's what the space allows.
Okay.
No, I'm totally demonized. I was called an idiot in public the other day for suggesting that somebody wear a mask.
Right. No, and and I think it's funny because I think a lot of the conversations that I have when on Alice's thread, like my circle back is always that's left and right. It's like it's a human flaw. It's not ideological, it's not political, and for me, being going back with social workers, I'm like, I tie everything back to experience. So let's explore your childhood. Let's explore this, right? But I think it just kind of goes back to everybody's upbringings in the sense of lack of trust, so, and that's always my circle back. So when I hear people say, when it's personalized and that victimization is like, well, it's this and it's that, I'm just like, well, everybody has that experience in one shape or another. And for me, like, that's the shared space, right? It's like, you don't like being defined as this, then why are you defining people in the same collective manner? Right. And so how do we truly treat people in a way that we expect people to treat us, if that makes sense. But
yeah, but if you make the golden rule a rule, it becomes something else.
Exactly.
And so one thing that I've learned that kind of changed my perspective was, the golden is like treat people how you want to be treated. But then also I've learned you also have to treat people how they want to be treated.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and I think there goes that when you have different value systems. So like I'm one where shoot it to me straight. I get offended when you give me the fluff and you lead up to the, oh, I just want to let you're just absolutely amazing and this. And I'm like, hey, don't butter me up. Just go and tell me what's the issue. Just shoot it to me straight. While some people, they need the butter. And so it's our responsibility to kind of recognize the audience. Obviously, some people have that skill set more than others. As a social worker, I didn't have it at 21. I didn't have it at 25. I probably developed it at 35. Right. And so, but really just learning that my value system is different from other people. So while, yes, there may be that golden rule, but there has to be that openness and flexibility to say, okay, well, you're not Christian, you're not Muslim, you're not this. So I need to adjust and respect whatever your values are and treat you accordingly.
Can we hear from Paul and Jason and Ian? I think, Ian, I've learned some about you from the previous session, which I listened to the recording of, but I didn't listen to the whole thing. I'd like to hear from Jason and Paul.
I guess I should go since I'm unmuted. Sorry, I got a kitty in my lap. She's very, ow, stop biting me. So nice. It seems like most of the people here are on the left side of the spectrum. I'm kind of middle on some things. I kind of like my father I'd say I'm socially somewhat liberal and economically conservative. I think, and I think I've mentioned in my emails, I take part in Brave Angels, and we're now, for some reason, picked to be the like the flagship for the country. We're getting money, so we're doing a lot, and we've been pretty successful in drawing in conservatives like what was her name? The other woman, I just watched her, but like she said, it's harder to get Reds to take part in this, and I don't know. My personal view is it definitely feels like virtually everything is dominated by people on the left side of the aisle. I know my social circles are dominated that way. And so I think Reds feel pretty uncomfortable. And because they are demonized so much, I mean, they're all viewed as, I think I mentioned my email, white supremacists, brain dead Neanderthals. And so they're just tired of this crap. And I think the fact that like Trump was obviously every single thing he said was, and I'm not a huge fan of Trump, but every single thing he said was fact checked. And but then other organizations like yeah, they never fact check anything that BLM says. They rarely fact check anything Biden says. Um, and there's some other group there. Um, and so I feel like I'm kind of part of that. And so what about me is like I spend most of my time with people that are different than me. So um, I'll talk cricket with Indians. I've spent a lot of time with Indians. Um, I spent a lot of time with Africans. I've now joined a African American hiking group. I've spent some time at the synagogue. I've been out to the mosque a lot. They now know me there, so I've made friends with them. Um, but I haven't done that much. Oh, I'm married to a psychology professor, so I definitely am familiar with psychology. My wife's a little more left-leaning than I. And then, I mean, the way I see things, and I don't like to hear myself talk too much. I'm not going to talk that long, but the way I see things is like, I mean, Trump had a lot of really bad things, but he did some pretty good things. I mean, the economy worked really well, and I think a lot of discussion is lost by just saying, well, he's just white supremacist, and it's all a backlash against Obama because of racism against black people. And I'm like, I mean, it's just ridiculous, stupid stuff. Like Biden does a lot of bad. I mean, Trump did a lot of bad things. I mean, he's not a good person, but I mean, a lot of the things that he did really worked out. And I mean, one of the things they don't talk about is between 2016 and 2020, Trump doubled his non-white vote. The only reason that Biden won is because white people shifted from Trump to Biden. Yet somehow Trump is the white supremacist candidate. I don't really can't quite figure that out. So yeah, I mean, I do a lot of things like this. So there's some group called Stand Up for Racial Justice. So I've worked my way into that to see why these left-wing people think the way they do. And I've kind of found there isn't a lot there. And then I've also tried to connect with conservatives on vaccine, hey sweetie, vaccine skepticism. And I'm part of the Red Caucus for Braver Angels, so I hear a lot of them. I hear a lot of them kind of gassing about things that I think are silly, like the fact that Trump really won the election, it was stolen. But I think a lot of that comes from the fact that I just think conservatives don't feel like anybody listens to them. They just think that people think they're stupid racists. So, yeah, and the one question I have is, it looks like we've got like 2 organizers and like 7 participants. What are we trying to accomplish with so few people?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe we should hear from Paul and then talk about that, because I was hoping that what we could accomplish would come out of sort of organically from this group, sort of talking about what's missing in your work. What is there a way to make a leap forward? Is there a way to use this new technology to do something that we haven't done before? I would hope that using my 45 years of being a psychiatrist and a psychoanalyst could add another dimension to the understanding of some of these dynamics. Plus, there's the dialogue, our difficulty staying in a room with someone who's different from us. And then there's the policy problem. What actually do we teach our children about American history? And it's one thing to have a conversation. I'd love to hear a conversation between, some of you about that issue, but then how does it get implemented without, school boards shooting each other?
Oh boy, you might want to take baby steps there, Alice, but okay.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
pretty
wow.
good at taking baby steps. Imagining a big picture and taking baby steps to get there. That's kind of what my work is about. Anyway, Paul, you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. Hi, so I'm Paul. I live in Seattle, although I grew up, and I've been here for almost 30 years, but I grew up in Canada. And so, my kind of formative experience was shaped by that in part, and kind of the differences that I experienced when I first moved here in the late 80s, early 90s, and since. I've actually worked in the tech industry my entire career, and have not been all that involved in politics. I'd say that on the spectrum of, I guess, left, right, I consider myself moderate, but definitely I'd say on the left side of center. Probably more, similar Jason, like socially liberal and more economically conservative. But the reason I've joined this is that I took some time off of work to get involved in the election in 2020, and I ended up working with an organization that was definitely kind of supporting Democratic candidates, because I felt kind of an existential. The country was in a really challenging place, and I felt personally at risk because of it, and that the country was at risk. It was kind of and I'm also Jewish, and so and I've studied the Holocaust, and I'm on the board of a local Holocaust organization, and so I think part of my view of the world is shaped by that as well. And so I was involved in the 2020 election. I led a group of volunteers who made a lot of calls. I probably made thousands of phone calls and talked to hundreds of people, mostly in in red states. So we were calling into Utah, we were calling into Alabama, we were calling into Louisiana, Oklahoma, states. And I was talking to people that, my kind of, I think unintentionally, but my social circle and here in Seattle was very, very democratic, right? And so I feel like I don't have exposure, like direct exposure, direct relationships with many people who, who are on the other side of the spectrum, and and maybe they don't even feel comfortable saying where they lie in the spectrum, because Seattle is, I'd say in general, a pretty left-leaning place. But the thing that really struck me from these phone calls was that the vast majority of people we spoke with, across the spectrum, all they wanted to know about the candidates was there an R or a D beside their name? That's all they cared about. And, we were calling on behalf of Democratic candidates running in purple districts in red states. And so these were the most moderate Democrats that were running. And a lot of their positions put them in conflict with the vast majority, I'd say, of the Democratic caucus. And some of them had won seats in 2018 in their districts. But people didn't care. People did not care. And it was on both sides. Like, you'd call someone, this candidate, they Democrat, Republican. If they were Democrat, if the person we spoke with Democrat, they got my vote, right? If this person we're speaking was Republican, nope, no way. And beyond just that kind of immediate reaction, right, and kind of lack of any kind of interest or curiosity or discussion was the vitriol. I mean, I read about the divide, and and I have my own personal perspective on kind of what's happened in the country, but the number of F-bombs that I had and other people on my team had, someone called me the N-word over the phone, like, and I was like, oh my God, like, no matter what happens with this election, this country is in big, big trouble. And so I tend to, just like in my work and just the way I am, I like to listen to different perspectives. I like to talk with different kinds of people, try to find middle ground. And I was actually put in touch with a guy who's a professor, I can't remember his name now, at University of Washington and Washington State University, who's leads an organization called the Ruckelshaus Center. I don't know, Alice, if you're familiar with it. It was founded by Bill Ruckelshaus. It works to, among other things, to kind of create, I think, a dialogue and to and so I spoke to the professor there, and he gave me a few names of different organizations that were doing work to try to kind of encourage conversation and encourage people finding the humanity in other people as a kind of, and so I got on some email list, and then I saw the email that came through Allison about this study, and I thought, well, it might be interesting to get involved and to see if I can learn something or contribute to some kind of learning that can try to heal things a bit. Because as one, by contrast, my whole family is still in Canada, and they just had an election, a federal election. Their election seasons are like 6 weeks, like 8 weeks long. It's not this 4-year cycle that goes on where everyone's constantly running. And, when talking to my brother and sister who live there, I said, so who are you going to vote for? And, they said, I think I'm voting conservative this time, the Conservative Party, which is still, for, relative to the United States, would still be considered probably left-leaning, but for Canada, it's more to the right. And, people don't have the same attachment to political parties there that they do here, we do here. And where here, it's like it feels like it's part of people's identity as to what party they're part of. And I'm an independent. I will not register as part of a party, because I feel like it just would cause me, and I feel like it causes other people to not have to think so much about issues. And it's just like, if I register as a Republican, then I can, this is my position on things. And if I register as a Democrat, then this is my position on things, and this is who I'm going to vote for. And I think that kind of is not a healthy thing for democracy. And so, anyway, that's a bit about me.
Hey, Alice, can I very briefly introduce myself for folks who haven't met me?
Yes.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Ian. Doesn't really matter what my political background is, but if you want, I'll say so at the end. But I'm slightly pessimistic about the potential for this technology or any other technology to necessarily make inroads in the challenge that I completely agree with most of you have said, and why you're here and what Alice is trying to accomplish. For one reason, or for one main reason, and that's sort of because we as just human beings, naturally we want to be part of a group, but we also naturally distrust the other, whoever the other is. And what is frustrating about what has occurred in politics in our lifetimes is that there used to be at least an American, not a whitewashed or mythical or perfected story, but people could find themselves in an American story, or in an American progress, or in an American ideal And that was sort of the common thread that brought cohesiveness among so many different, peoples and different groups. And that is unique in world history and world culture. I mean, what we have achieved as a society, even though for all of its imperfections and strides that still need to be taken, is unique when you look back at the big, picture. But frustratingly, we are so factionalized, and so many of those factions seek to tear down anything that is actually viewed as common across groups, and just focus on an identity opposed against another identity, and those two or those many are incompatible and essentially at odds against each other in a very zero-sum kind of way that feeds what I heard a lot of people describe as their perception of how whichever group you're part of feels like it's on the outs, or is, So just very quickly, background is, so father's side of the family, Russian Jewish immigrants, mother's side of the family, Scotch Irish immigrants. And when they got together, you can imagine how rural Scots Irish farmers and stuff would have a lot of distrust for, urban Jewish, there's just a lot of natural distrust there. But they became, not just accepting, but a family, because they were able to see past what is normally, what you sort of perceive at first blanch as being, the other or something really different, not to be trusted, to understanding that, okay, you've had your family and your history is one of struggle and overcoming that, and so is mine. Different circumstances, different environments, but fundamentally, both could relate to each other, because that's what human beings have in common. And so that's sort of what I feel is a lack of ability to see that, or if not even that, just an insistence in groups to say, no, your group has definitely always been on top and taking advantage of my group, and therefore we cannot ever really, unless you renounce everything that you've been part of historically or familially or ethnically, you cannot be part of the solution. And that's what I see as the big concern. I rambled on a little bit longer than I wanted to, but that's me in a nutshell.
I think one of the problems is that when we band together in large groups, large group dynamics happen. And then there's a cascade effect. There's people you sacrifice certain things that they believe individually so they can become part of a larger collective, and they fight for truth and justice and my version of Superman. And what I'd like to do here is just start with individuals, and just take the risk of being an individual and getting to know other individuals and seeing what comes out of that. The people in the middle ground either tend to, opt out and post, cat pictures on their Facebook pages and, vote for nobody knows, or they're just so, adamant about what they believe that they're impossible to argue with. This feels like it's a small group, but it's a group of people who seem interested in hearing what the other side has to say and interested in building a bridge.
Alex, we have a mystery guest. Should we hear from Changing Our Consciousness?
Oh, that's Matt.
Okay.
Yeah, Matt, who was here before. He's our tech guy. He's the one who found you. I know nothing about tech. I'm a dinosaur. He's been, working with me, for me, and he's the one who posted the Twitter post that and designed the questionnaire and got this set up. So I am enormously grateful to him. And another example. Matt, we're talking about you. That he gets it, And he gets it because, you know, he knows me. I know his mother.
Hi,
And that,
I can hear you.
and you know, it's not that hard, is my point. If we just invite people to think thoughtfully about these things, they're like, oh, Eureka, I can do that. And he did it beautifully. So, you know, it's not as hard as it seems like it is. If we can just find people and get them engaged.
Did we already lose Zelma though? Because I see that she's gone. Did she have to leave already?
She had to leave. Yeah, she had to go to work.
Oh, darn it.
I know, but she's involved. I know her from Facebook. This is the first time I've met her personally, but she will definitely hear the rest of this and remain in touch.
Okay. So where you want to go, Alice?
Okay. I'll tell you my fantasy is that, you know, this was set up to be a 2-week project, alternating writing on the email list and then this talking, and see if we could go somewhere, develop something. My fantasy is that we can work on some small project. For example, a small project, design the outlines of American history curriculum for middle or high school kids, and have the people on all sides of the critical race theory argument talk to each other, share their feelings, share their passions, share their you know, imaginings, and actually come up with thought experiments that could be lesson plans.
Oh boy.
That would bring together both sides. And then if we could do something like that, we could market it. And we could say, look, this is what we did and how we did it. And then we could do it again with something economic or something, some other thing. And then I would eventually like to start some kind of a movement where people could say, hey, that's cool. You know, I can do that. I'd like to try it in my classroom or with my friends, or, you know, instead of a video game, let's play, you know, design instead of designing an app to you know, kill somebody and planet, whatever, let's design you know, an economic plan for, and just get people intrigued, because in the mental health profession, you know, people have to want to do this stuff. You know, the psychiatric joke, how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the light bulb has to really want to change. If we can motivate people to do it because it's fun and it's contributory and they'll learn something from it and they'll contribute something to it, maybe they'll do it. I don't know, but I'd certainly like to try. What do you think?
But it's the motivating that is the crucial thing there.
Yeah.
Beatles said we all want to change the world, but you better free your mind instead. By which they seem to address an individual. One of the things about psychoanalysis maybe is that it's individual to individual.
It's individual.
It is a different space on the couch.
Exactly, it's a different space.
But it's not a group of people sharing a challenge. And I love it that you want to produce that.
Yeah, I think of it as Homo sapiens on the couch. You know, because, you know, I'm used to helping people analyze conflicts, internal conflicts. You know, I love you and I hate you. That's a normal part of human dynamics. You know, I want to keep what I want for myself, but I want to be a generous person. We all struggle with that. We can take that model and use it to construct some economic plan that's, you know, generous to everyone, but doesn't victimize them and allows people who, you know, to keep what they are entitled to and not have to feel controlled. And, you know, if we look at all of the psychological forces and the practical realities, you know, we're creative. I mean, we fly to Mars. We put Captain Kirk in space. You know, we can do that. it's if we can just be motivated to come up with some creative solutions.
Well, Sandy is your expert on curricula, isn't she?
Yeah. Yes, and she definitely is interested in continuing.
Yeah.
That,
Excuse me a second. Was not here last week, and I did not get the links for your conversation or anything else about what you've been writing. I have no idea about.
You didn't
any
get
of that.
you didn't get the email.
Hey, Tom.
I don't
Sorry,
think so.
I thought I sent them to you. I will resend it.
I did a search for waging dialogue, and unless it came
Okay.
from some other source.
I'll send you another invite.
Check the spelling on dialogue. I think you might notice it's a little different.
Yeah, I
maybe
copy
how
and
you're-
paste.
And
Okay.
it also may have gone to spam.
I doubt it. My spam's not that smart.
My spam. I've lost some significant things by not checking my spam folder. But yeah, you should all have access to the email chain that we started last week.
so just in terms of the project you suggested, my initial reaction is that sounds maybe the toughest thing we could possibly try to do.
Yeah, that was my first reaction too, but we can give it a shot.
Yeah.
Or try something different. What's a simpler project?
Well, the only thing is that, I mean, Sandy has pretty much wanted to start that in the email dialogue, I can see too, but I worry we would spiral into, well, you know what? I don't know what another topic is. I mean, if anyone has one, I'd be interested to hear it, but yeah, we could go with CRT as, or with school curriculum and try to avoid the pitfalls of a CRT debate.
Or use the debate for the purpose of resolving it. You know, there's empathy. There's, you know, I understand how you feel, or I'll try to understand the different ways that you see the situation. But then what if you're, you know, another teacher at the school? What if you're a curriculum designer at my school? What if you're another parent at, you know, let's try to make it's something that we have to get done, rather than just, you know, exercise in empathy. I don't know. I full disclosure, a few years ago, for about 5 or 6 years, I designed and co-taught an emotional literacy curriculum at an after-school program in Harlem. The curriculum designer, the teacher, and I were white, and all of the students were students of color. It was an after-school sports academic program. Kids went 3 hours a day, every day. They played squash, and they did homework, and they did, you know, academic stuff. And what we did for the first set of classes, which went over very well, we gave the students alternate identities. So each student was, you know, you're, you know, a white bus driver, you're a Black CEO, you know, you're you know, you own a house, you're the housekeeper, you know, you're, you know, you own a yacht, you work on the yacht, you built the yacht. And their first reaction was to be thrilled if they were the millionaires or the celebrities, and to be devastated if they were, you know, a chef or a, you know, a waitress or a disabled veteran or something. Having that conversation was very helpful. Just, you know, you're a person. We're talking about how different people live their lives. And then we gave them jobs, salaries, income brackets. They did their taxes. They pay the taxes to the government. And then we talked about what the government did with that big pile of money that they got from them, and how they would spend it. And after a while, the kids really got into it. The teachers got into it. It was like the teachers learned something from just having to figure out how to teach the kids where their money went. They didn't even realize themselves, you know, that, you know, their jobs were being, if you work for, the Board of Education, your income was coming from their taxes, and the kids they also didn't realize that their program was funded by Goldman Sachs. And so somehow over the course of the semester, and they wound up using their income to decide what kind of house to buy, what kind of car to buy, whether they can pay for their kids' colleges, how much the sneakers cost. And it was really, really helpful, I think, at the end, because they came out with greater empathy for sort of everybody, including their parents and their bus drivers and and just money, where money went. So, and they went afterwards, they wrote a book. It was really interesting. I can send you links if you're interested. But, go ahead, sorry.
What I liked about what you're describing there, Alice, and if we tackle this sort of history curriculum thing, it's kind of what I'm concerned about, though, is that what you talked about in there was that, people got different roles, right? And they were excited if they were in one role, or they were, maybe disappointed if they were in another role. But that's the tricky part of tackling something like coming up with a history curriculum now, is that there are so many forces that are trying to use history curriculums to put broad brush entire groups of people into roles that are not really, so we have to almost sort of start out as if we're going to do the history curriculum thing, it's got to be okay. We're gonna gee, I just don't know how to describe this. It's like we have to make sure that everyone can find their story, like I was saying before, sort of like in the history of America, and that it's not all a noble noble groups here, bad groups there, because I've seen some of the changes to curriculums and proposed changes to curriculums that do that. And I think that's why there's such a controversy and conflict over it, is that history is sort of being used as a weapon to sort of push a narrative that kind of exacerbates the problem that we're trying to get out of. So we're going to have to try and avoid that.
Exactly.
Tom, would you say something about the CRT controversy from your perspective?
Well, it's so sure, because I guess Sandy already has pretty much on the email thread. I guess I would just say that there's
I was asking Tom.
Oh, Tom. Oh, okay. Tom's muted.
Yeah, my gardener's here. So in case you hear a loud mowing. Yeah, I think the CRT is foolishness. Okay. It's like the kids are not getting what they need as an education as it is. They're coming out and they try to send them to junior college, and they have to take algebra. They don't have algebra skills. They don't have reading skills. And now we want to throw something else on top of them that's going to so weigh down their ability to learn other things, because you're impressing upon them this social order or disorder trying to become order. And it's like those things really should be taught by the parents. And if you want to start a CRT curriculum, then teach the parents. Get something going that here's what the adults need to learn about the whole subject, so that they can pass it on to the children, instead of trying to say, okay, we're going to grow the children. I just find it dangerous.
Well, what? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, just to answer Henry's, if what you're trying to get at, Henry, was sort of what's the concern around it or the fear around it, it's that when you look at curriculums, first of all, there's a sort of a myth around why it's needed, right? Which is that, at least from when I grew up in the 70s and 80s, that somehow the American history that was taught just, sort of omitted any talk of America's, original sin or stains on our history or the different issues that, were social struggles between different groups in our history. That just hasn't been true since at least when I was growing up. But the second is that when you look at how it has influenced curriculums, and you look at, say, pick a topic like Revolutionary War, Civil War, different things, there's no sort of like thread of, here's the political philosophy backgrounds of why the Revolutionary War happened. Here's the causes, the origins, the outcomes. It's all much more of a power description of, well, this was ultimately still just a war between white people for white power over, Native Americans or slaves that were imported or something. And it doesn't have an effect of, doesn't even really look at those things from what was unique about this American experiment that started imperfectly and then had to overcome so many other things. It's just like, well, this was still just a continuation of white supremacy, and then this event was also just a continuation of this, or then, and so I think that's sort of the, and it assigns these roles, right, as almost like you can't break out of this role if you have a history, a personal ethnic background that aligns to that, you're part of that history. Tough luck if it doesn't look so appealing to you, So that's what I think the controversy might be about, and that's what I'm hoping we try to avoid if we're going to address this as like come up with a history curriculum as a topic for the group, is that we have to really try to avoid the pitfalls of what's made it such a controversial area to try and look at now. So, okay, I see the thumbs up. So you're, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, my understanding of CRT was that a lot of it wants to go back to the 1618 group.
1619.
1619.
1619.
But yeah,
sorry, Mr.
It's a good place to start.
And you really can't look at slavery as 1619. And you have to look at slavery as 2000 BC. Okay, and then if you really want to talk about slavery, start at the beginning of slavery, which was the start of any culture. People were forever enslaving whoever they defeated. Okay, now if you look at what we did in the U.S., we didn't enslave the American Indians and put them in labor camps. Instead, they did something they brought the people from Africa who were already enslaved tribe to tribe, and they transported it here. Stupid as it was, evil as it was, it was one of those things that they did because of agriculture. If people didn't want sugar, if they didn't want tobacco, they didn't want later cotton, okay, you never would have had it. And once the machinery was developed, it was essentially no longer needed. But there's still slavery in the world even today. And I mean, if we want to talk about slavery, then let's go ahead and talk about, ending slavery in the Congo or in the diamond area where they're taking children out. What Congo's doing in the cobalt mines. Why are we not, if we really want to talk about it and do something about it, we put our energies into beating ourselves to death for something that we've already concluded it should have been done 150 years ago, concluded. It wasn't. Now, having said that, let's talk about Charlottesville for a second, if you might. the statue of Robert E. Lee. You know, to me, I look at that as if I were a Black person, I would find that just a sign of the slavery and the evil and all the stuff that happened to my people 150 years ago, you know, and I'd have a hard time not seeing it that way. I don't believe in rebel flags. I think the statues really should, you know, the people in town should say, is this guy a historical figure, a founding father of the city, even though he was a racist, and say, yeah, we'll choose to keep it. But if not, yeah, get rid of it. I mean, there was an artist that one of his things was putting a crucifix in a jar of urine. You remember that one at all?
Yeah.
That guy, I forget his name. Okay, was that not really offensive to Christians, particularly to Catholics? Was a crucifix? But how much on the things that, well, we need to deal with that. We need to deal with the persecution against this group of people that's happening in India. Okay, India, there's areas where Christians, they're getting wiped out because there's radical Hindus. You know, it's pretty bad. Right now, if you're in Afghanistan and you're a Christian, you're undercover, okay? And somehow we swept that whole thing under the rug because as Jason probably feels, it's, you know, it's something that happened with Biden. We don't want to talk about that any longer because he really blew it. But there are still, what, 300, 400 that either American citizens or people that helped us to a great extent that they have to be in hiding, okay? And what is our government doing to say we need these people out? Here's a list of names, get them out, okay? Is that not a worse evil than dealing with CRT?
Okay.
I just put that out there.
Well,
I don't know if it's
so,
either or though. I mean, from my perspective, yeah. So when it comes to history curriculum, having grown up and went to high school in Canada, I didn't study American history, so I don't have anything to. Although I did go on a trip to DC for a week with there was an American history class.
yes, the trip to DC, the annual.
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know that it's either or, right? That like I don't think that schools need to decide between teaching about, you know, the awful circumstance in Afghanistan or what's going on in China with the Uyghurs and all these other places, and also teaching about our own history. So I don't know how much of kind of slavery and the kind of history of racism was taught in the 70s and 80s in the history curriculum. It does seem to me, just, you know, having not really studied it myself, that it's an important part of kind of understanding who like the United States is as a, like, you know, part of its like amazing ideals. And I agree, Ian, with what you said, that like what the country has done and accomplished is just incredible. And it can also be true at the same time that it's done some things that, you know, have not been so great. And it seems to me like it's okay to, and we should recognize the great things that the country's done and recognize the not so great things the country's done. And that's like what makes me angry about all the stuff that, again, comes out on the left, the far left, is, you know, like just like us, right? People, George Washington, these people were complex people, and they're not, you know, they're not all great, and they're not all terrible either. And I think we just have to understand that, yes, George Washington could have done amazing things and been an amazing leader and led the revolution and so on, and also had slaves, right? And like those two things can be true at the same time. And, you know, it doesn't mean we should erase all memory of him. And it also doesn't mean that we should completely ignore maybe some of the sides of him as a person that maybe, you know, in, you know, looking back weren't so weren't so great.
It's one of the very complex psychodynamic issues, how to, honor the great achievements. I mean, the statue of Thomas Jefferson was just taken down from the New York City Council.
Yeah.
How do you teach that to children? Why did we need to do that? What does it mean to have been a slave owner back at that time? How do kids, learn to think about that? The other piece of it is the white privilege thing that a lot of people are very upset about. Some feel very strongly that white kids need to realize how just privileged they are by their skin color, and others are like, no, don't force us to apologize for something that was done for different reasons hundreds of years ago. How do you teach that? I felt it little myself when I had an insight pre-BLM when I was teaching this course. They were looking for therapists for some of the students in this course, could not find anyone. And I found myself realizing that I was screening people who called for appointments based on their insurance, which was, and I found myself with the, rich white bankers and not the, little black kids on Medicaid. And I deliberately changed that because I once I realized what I was doing. And I think that's some of the things that they are wanting to call attention to.
Right. But Alice, I mean, you also would have probably not pulled up any rural white farmers either in your screening process, or any, uninsured immigrant, I mean, there's a whole lot of, so that's my other concern with this is that it becomes such a, that's okay. That's just, we'll press on. But do we want to? I'm starting to hear, especially in sort of the responses to the idea that that this could be this sort of a really. I mean, does anyone want to offer a set of let's start here and keep it within this for lack of a better term, left-right lanes of what we're going to try and accomplish, because we could spiral off onto tangents that have nothing to do with coming up with a, say a curriculum for American history and not address that. So Alice, I'll leave it up to you if you want to try it, or anyone else really, if you want to offer some guidelines or what we should talk about, or keep it in a box, or I don't know.
I don't know. No? Any other? Jason?
Well, American history usually follows the history of the government. Okay. What happened in the government? Where'd they go? What'd they do? What was the relationship with other nations? What wars did they participate in? Well, and that's much of the history. Now, the culture, in American culture, man, that changed. I mean, both my sides of grandparents came into the US in the early 1900s. Okay. So the background of my culture had nothing to do with the United States. It grew up, if you look at the background of my culture, my parents lived through the Depression, as I'm sure some of yours did. Okay. And you live through the Depression or the Holocaust, that shapes you on how you think. And then you shape the next generation, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. My parents didn't have great education. My dad was 8th grade, my mom was 10th. Okay. So they never chose to get much further educated. My dad liked to read Westerns. My mom didn't, she read Ladies' Journal, whatever. You see what I'm saying? It's so what you garner from the other kids you're growing up with, what you hear in culture, and back in the 50s and 60s, you know where that went. Okay. So the culture led to where? 70s, which, I spent a decade in drugs, living with women out of wedlock, and drinking a lot. Okay. That was where things led me, because I had nothing other substantial. And I think we're looking at a lot of things we want to do with kids. Our issue is fathers. We need to get the fathers involved in things. Where are the fathers that want to take care of their kids, that want to impress upon their children, particularly the boys, how to become a man? Okay? My purpose for my daughter was to make her into an adult. Okay? If she's a good adult and knows how to be an adult, then I succeeded. A lot of other stuff she's gotten herself. She also is a therapist. She's a marriage family therapist. Okay. But all that kind of work, she got led to her education and now her career. But that was because my wife and I were both educated. I got a couple degrees. My wife was a CPA. So that's what we grew our daughter up on. Where are the parents' influences on the children today? And we must highlight that and let the parents, help the parents become better parents if they have poor parenting skills. And above all, get the fathers back involved with the kids. You've probably heard about that Florida school that was having all kinds of fights and brawls, and it was bad. They had to call the cops almost every day. Did you hear about that one? No? Yeah. What happened was two fathers said, that's it, we're sick of this, and we're going to start going to that school every day and taking care of whoever's being rowdy. That grew, and now there's 40 fathers involved. Okay, they're involved with the police to make sure the police first check the background of who's coming in, but once they do, they're starting to take care of their own kids. Stop fighting, get back to school, learn to be a child, learn to be an adult. Okay. And why do we have to wait till there's a major crisis before we get that? And to me, that's where we need to go. If you want to change America.
How do we get there? Concretely, if we're doing this kind of project, how do you market parenthood?
Yeah. You're the psychoanalysis. Come on.
No, you brought it up, Tom. How do you?
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Well,
how can we turn that into some kind of project that we can get started with, and maybe bring in other people? But
what they're doing with this school in Florida, they're trying to sort of get hey, let's do what Florida did. Okay. And we need to see who's doing it right and promote them. The government, everybody else wants to give money to BLM, which, they're Marxists who the lady just bought a $3.4 million home. Okay. I don't get that. But anyway, why we're putting so much money into groups like that instead of groups like these fathers and other parenting groups that are doing the right thing? How do we promote them? There's a guy named Woodson. I forget his first name. It's Woodson.
Robert Woodson.
Yeah.
Bob Woodson.
Bob Woodson. And his company gives $5,000 grants to organizations where parents are starting and fathers are starting to do the right thing. Okay. That's what we need to see. The reason we don't hear about it is it doesn't make the news. It's not somebody killing somebody shouting at somebody, and because that's what makes the news. That's what sells tickets for people to come watch their program. And unfortunately, we need to see it from go down a different road. How do we get the dads involved? How do we get parents learning more parents?
One thing I can tell you is that the younger generation, fathers are much more involved. My son stayed home with his 2 to 3 year old last year while his wife was working, during COVID. And a number of my patients, the males are the primary caretakers for their children.
Yeah, I was going to say there is that generational shift back towards, or not, I don't know, back, but definitely there's a generational shift, with father involvement in
which was forced upon them. Because of COVID. Okay, where do we go from there?
Well, Well, first of all,
How
where
How
we
do
go
we use
is,
that to get
well,
something better?
well, look, just as a joke, nothing ever good came from starting with, let's just do what Florida did. So I'm just gonna just throw that
Okay.
out there. That but maybe what Alice, maybe what we're hearing is that what do folks think about, it sounds like because this is what I was afraid is going to happen. It does have, I think we need something maybe a little bit more, how about we just come up with does it mean to be an American or something along those lines? Because when we try to start with a topic like, the school curriculum, the history curriculum stuff, it's very easy to get off on these tangents of these other problems. Do we try to come up with what is a fundamental American citizen? Like, what does that mean? Or, I don't know, what do people think?
What would be the
Jason's hand
marker
up.
for that? How would you implement that? What would implementing that look like?
I've talked too much. How about Jason? You were going to say something. You're muted, Jason.
Wow, somebody saw my raised hand. Wow, I think I've missed a lot of the topics, but I don't know. Yeah, CRT is not going to be anything. That's a huge amount of work, and I don't see anybody listening to us. And
Well, if we could come together on a way of imagining it, I think a lot of people would listen, because nobody's listening to anybody these days.
right. The CRT is, it's not about history. It's about political indoctrination. Is people who put this together on the left feel like if they can shove this horse shit down children's throats from age 5 to 18, then they're going to vote for Democrats when they turn.
Well, okay. So what if not trying to just debunk CRT as a topic? Like, did you have a response to the whole, like, just come up with what does an American citizen mean, like, or something like that, or what do you propose?
Yeah. Well, hold on a second. Let me get the quote that I'm looking for, from Albert Murray. Is copy and pasted here. I was just in on an event. It was fighting anti-Black and anti-Semitism, racism, and the thing is like, Albert Murray wrote this in 1970. Is we are Americans first, and all the hyphenated stuff is just a little bit of seasoning mixed in. We all basically speak the same. We speak the same language. We all speak English, unless you've just come over here recently. We all speak with basically the same accents. Even Black English and Southern English are very closely related. We eat the same food. We listen to the same music. A lot of the Black cultural contributions, blues and jazz and rap, have been adopted by all people of all different skin colors in America. Races don't exist though; they're all fake, because race is just a product of racism. Like race is. There's a good book by Barbara Fields, Racecraft, and it's about how, all these different discussions of racism they're all derived from these antebellum concepts of race. Like, when a white person, a Black person has a child, why is that person Black? Racism. This dates back from the quadroon, octoroon, all this stuff are Black blood tainted people. It's all ridiculous stuff. So, right, and that's what we seem to have forgotten. Like, why are we teaching people that America has been a war between all these different groups? It's basically white people oppressing Native Americans, white people oppressing Asians, white people oppressing Blacks. That doesn't make for a harmonious society. And I think that drives, there's two big problems in America. And I think that racial essentialism is driving a lot of the tension, and it's all ridiculous. And the other thing is gerrymandering. Basically, very few of us actually have a meaningful vote in any way. I live in Ohio, and we have it's basically roughly 50-50 state. We have 12 Republicans and 4 Democrats. I mean, you could put a pumpkin with an R on it, and it would win in the majority of the districts in the state. The Senate is like 30-9 or something. The House is ridiculously gerrymandered. So there is no political say. So when any moron can win political office and then become someone in the House of Representatives, they can act like a total jackass because they're never going to lose.
I agree with you 100%, Jason. 100% agree with you.
I mean, it happens in Illinois too. I mean, I'm from Chicago, and they're going to even more gerrymander the state. So that to me, like, one of my main things is like, unless we fix gerrymandering, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because we're just
well, there'll always be something else, but that's a big one.
But it does push everything to the extremes, and all that people on both sides care about is, are they going to get primaried? Because they know in the general election that, you know, their seat is, you know, if they can get through to the general, then they can probably win.
So they just run to the extremes.
Exactly.
Okay, how about here's another idea. How about like we could talk about what being an American should mean, and then what it does mean in this sense, and for all groups, not just for like a black, white, or a dichotomy. But we could say like being American should mean equality under the law. What does that mean? What does that look like? But in reality, we know that, you know, money talks in the legal system more than other things. So if you've got a lot of money, you're probably going to get a better outcome than if you are stuck with a public defender or something like that. Like those are things we could say about, well, here's what we fundamentally believe should be, or based on, you know, our history and our Constitution. This is what an American should be able to look forward to, and then look at ways that deviates and try and come up with ways to, like, why, you know, how do we fix that? Instead, not about how it happened, not going over like, you know, well, that's because fundamental white supremacy, blah, 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 or because of whatever, but just like, how do we fix that?
That also, it addresses immigration.
Right.
You define an American.
Can I suggest one other?
I was going to say, I can't figure out why we live in the richest, freest country in the world of every ethnic group. I mean, if I were black, the place I would want to live in the world is the United States, because we have the richest, freest black people in the world of every people of East Asia, South Asia. Where else in the world would you want to live? But people are like so pessimistic. They're so angry. They feel like the killing of one unarmed person is a genocide. It's like, what is wrong with people? Like, why don't people look around and see, like, you have a massive house, you have 2 cars, practically brand new, you have modern medicine. I mean, you barely have an ache or pain or get sick, and like, but people feel like living in America is like living in Nazi Germany or something. It's like, what is wrong with people? I mean, optimism, if we could somehow promote optimism.
Well,
I could think of some places, if I was black, I'd rather be living in the United States, personally.
Okay, all right.
That's not how the rest of the world feels. Okay, most of the world wants to get to the United States.
It's true. It's true. Most of the world does want to get to the United States. But I'm saying, if I was black, I'm not sure that the United States would be the first place I'd want to come.
Nigeria?
No.
No.
Yeah. Go to Africa and talk to them.
No.
Oh, guys, let's be careful here. It's really hard to put yourself in someone else's.
I might want to go to France. I might want to go to Canada. I might want to go to England.
Well, sure, okay, but to be sure, true, if you were Algerian, you wouldn't want to be in France. So I mean, there's, you know, that there's all we can go down this rabbit hole, or we can try and not go down this rabbit hole. What were you going to say, Paul?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
I would.
Okay,
but again, I agree. Like, I don't know what the experience is like to be, you know, I don't know what the experience is like to be black. in America. So yeah, it's hard for me to say. I was going to suggest another possible project that could be interesting, building off what you said, Jason, about gerrymandering, is coming together to propose how a fair way that districts, what's the way that districts should be drawn.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And what's the appropriate, not like what are the rules necessarily, but like how should it be done? Should it be up to state legislators? Should it be up to different other kinds of commissions? Like how do we address that? I think that would go a long way to, as you were saying, Jason, to helping get us back on a better, less kind of divided path.
When we did this in Ohio, they had two like plebiscites, referendums in the state that tried to force the state to redistrict. And basically the Republicans need to redistrict this year, and they just said to the voters, fuck you, we're not going to do it.
Whoa.
And so so they have this punishment where, they got to redistrict in another 3 years. Well, what do the Republicans care? They've gerrymandered so badly that they're going to have the majority next time. So every 3 years, they can give the finger to the people of Ohio. People came up with all these great maps. They put in all this effort. They don't care.
Right, because even if you say, look, we're going to appoint judges, we're going to appoint people to do this, and who are we going to get to appoint the judges? Who are we going to get to appoint those doing it? So they start fighting over who has that influence.
Yeah, but
and on it goes.
But I think you can get further away from like elected politicians who, like, right? I mean, no one can be completely unbiased with this stuff.
Again, who's going to appoint them? Who's going to appoint the people that you say they're not politicians?
Well, in
they
Colorado, we've done this.
The Supreme Court of Virginia. The Supreme Court of Virginia is about to decide on legislative maps in default of in the failure of the new constitutional amendment, which the voters passed overwhelmingly, mandating or providing for a commission that included unfortunately included legislators. So that we got politicians and ditto Ohio, Jason, we got the politicians saying, no, we aren't going to do that.
Here's how Colorado did it, just as and I'm not saying this is a solution, but just as this might be a good one to talk about, right? Because little more bound. But in 2018, Colorado started using independent commissions for redistricting, and the qualified, out of like over 1,000 qualified applicants who were selected based on their basically merit, were randomly selected. So not appointed by a political person or a judge or anything like that. They were just randomly selected. They created a pool, and that pool then had a smaller group randomly selected 6 commissioners from them to put forward the independently derived district maps for redistricting and everything. So that was kind of a really nice way to eliminate the political, who's going to appoint them, who are they really beholden to, all that kind of stuff. And then they came up with what were really, good maps. And they were good because everyone hated them. So if the Democrats don't like them and the Republicans don't like them for different reasons, then they must have been pretty independent, right? So
my look at it is simple. We got geography, we got population. Take your population, say how many districts are you allowed to have per the congressional assignment, and you say, okay, here's this group that you start making your districts the same size population wise, and you just group people geographically and be done with it. You guys want to live next to each other, okay, you're a district. You guys don't want to live next to each other, but you're still about the right population size, you're a district. And just have guidelines for population and geography. I mean, we do that with cities. We got maps with cities, and here's your lines. It's not, your city doesn't go always like that unless it's following a river. Yeah.
Can I share my screen for a sec?
Yeah, go ahead. I don't know if you're allowed to with the permissions we have, but you can try.
No, the host needs to.
Oh, well, that's Matt.
Matt, are you there?
Hey, what's up?
That's watching a football game.
I was just going to share a couple of. I share this with people, like just some visuals of some of the most gerrymandered districts in the country.
Yeah. Oh my Lord!
It is absolutely despicable.
Marina Del Rey. Okay. The
Sounds
docks,
like Florida.
The docks are one district. The boats are another. Yeah.
Ohio's terrible.
Yeah, is Matt not? Maybe we can text.
I'm here. What do you need?
Can you allow me to share my screen?
Ah, let's see.
Hey, Ian, what was the state where they had successful gerrymandering reform?
Wasn't Michigan one?
Well, there's a few. I believe the one I'm particularly thinking of is just my own state of Colorado.
Okay.
Because they submitted this independent commission. It got through the whole, how to build an independent commission, and then they submitted these redistricting plans, and it's being reviewed by the Colorado Supreme Court, or maybe it's already been. I'm not completely up on the news, but the point is that they took it out of the hands of the politicians and put it into the hands of randomly selected experts on this stuff, and they came up with, so that instead of trying to carve up districts that either dilute a very common okay, here we go. Here's Jason's screen.
Yeah, you see this?
Yeah,
Look at these.
right, yeah. So this is the problem.
Sure, we have those in Virginia.
Look at
Same
this.
district.
Yep.
Right.
But
So
a computer could draw. It could be random people like a jury, or a computer could draw districts.
well, I think the problem with computer potentially is that unless the computer has all the knowledge of, it depends on, it's a computer sounds, data, garbage in, garbage out is what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
Mhm.
Look at this. Look at these maps. Like, could they be any, and it happens both ways, but it's just, it's terrible.
Yeah. Now that seat, North Carolina. Yeah.
But the question, the challenge is, would we want to solve this, or are people so divided that, because this is why, right, that we don't have independent commissions, right? Because people don't want to solve it, because the left knows that if we solve it in some places, they're going to lose. And the right knows if we solve it in some places, they're going to lose.
Right.
Everybody wants to keep their safe seats.
But it's worth, I think we agree here, it's worth solving. Seems.
Go ahead, Alice. Sorry, we're cutting you off.
It seems to me that we've got a couple of topics that we could be talking about, at least to continue this discussion over the next week. See if we can maybe do something that we can crystallize into something useful that can be, discussed, not just back and forth and isn't this terrible, but actually present something. Anybody have any other topics? I find myself wondering if there's a male-female thing, because I have a feeling Sandy and Zelma and I would be more on the
I do. That is why I was concerned that Zelma left, and
more on the gerrymandering, which is fine. But that's are there other topics that we might consider just having different threads on the email chain over the next week and see where it goes, and then pull it together next week?
I don't have time for two topics, but I'll do what I can.
Yeah, we can start there at least.
I think we should start there.
Okay.
But Alice, to your point, I mean, throw us a bone. I mean, what do you think we might be leaving out that would be of interest or concern for folks who aren't here?
I don't know. I mean, there's economic issues, you know, how to level the playing field without, you know, whatever the fantasies are about rich people giving everything to the poor people, or poor people bringing them up by their bootstraps, or whatever the left-right fantasies are. If there's some way of dealing with that. Transgenderism is a whole other thing that I hear about all the time. You know, how do we teach that? Or do we you know, what do you do if your 9-year-old says, I want to be a girl?
Ooh, that's another. Pick an easier one.
Well, this is what I do for a living, so I gerrymandering is not my topic, but these families that come in with you know, racial, cultural, financial, and sex and gender issues are what I deal with all the time.
Well, okay. How about this one? Instead of the whole big, this is still going to be touchy, but we could go with something like how to equitably and fairly, for everyone, integrate transgender athletes into, you know, what has been traditionally male female differences in sports, whether high school or just anywhere. I mean, I think that could be one but I don't have enough knowledge of how to start that conversation. But it seems to be an issue. It seems to be controversial. It seems to be something that isn't going to go away. But I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I doubt we could stay with just sports without venturing into the whole territory, which it's a real conflict for me, because when you see kids, you know, medically you get a better outcome if you address it pre-puberty. On the other hand, there's so many other reasons why kids might be feeling, and peer pressure to, you know, you must be trans, or and then, you know, I don't know what's going to happen afterwards when they get the hormones and the surgeries, and
right. That's even more controversial. That's why I was trying to actually say, how about if we just do like after puberty, you know, after kids have like gotten to high school and you know, or maybe, you know, just how do we deal with it in sports, or how do we deal with it in, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. Why don't we just sit on all of this and, you know, email on the thread that Matt set up. If you don't have it, he'll send it to you, and then you just kind of see where we go with it over the next week. As I said, my only goal isn't so much the topic; it's whether we can dialogue across divides, empathize with each other, and come up with some ideas where we can demonstrate that this actually works.
Okay. Well, someone should start the redistricting thread then, because I don't think it exists yet. And Jason, I think you kind of offered it, and it's a good one to start. If you would start it, that would be great.
Yeah, I don't have any solutions though.
That's okay. Well, that's what we're gonna have you know.
And we're gonna.
It's fun. I'm thinking about how to redistrict even our email thread. You know, you guys are on this topic and you go over here, and you're on this topic and you go over there, and you can cross over.
Especially you start writing stream of conscience, right?
Yeah, right.
And Alice, would it be okay if the other topic that I think you were referring to is the sort of like school curriculum, history curriculum thing? Is it okay if I or someone else start a new thread on that? Because sort of the starting one that I saw in there already sort of went all over the place, and it wasn't quite so narrowly focused. And I'd kind of like to focus it a bit.
Yeah. Why don't we just start different topics, you know, and then anybody who wants to focus on one or another can do that.
Okay, but we could all contribute to either one if we're so inclined, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Some people have, you know, more of an interest or knowledge base. I mean, I don't know that much about the, you know, gerrymandering, except that it it's a thing and it's bad, but I don't know how to, enough about the.
Yeah, and I don't mean
factual-
to leave anything out too, because I realized like Paul didn't say much, and I could tell Tom had a really strong interest in something regarding parenting, but I wasn't sure what the topic really was. So if you have, I mean, I don't want to say that it has to be these two, but we like Henry said, we only have so much capacity for how long is this project supposed to go for? Just the next week? I mean, we only have so many.
I mean,
hours
I'm hoping
left.
we can go further with it after this, but
Okay.
just put some closure on something, a pilot project.
Okay.
Just, if we come out with just the ability to imagine a pilot project, that's great.
Okay. Okay.
Any
Okay,
other?
then. I guess we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, I don't know. Was there anything else you wanted to make sure we kind of accomplished in this setting, Alice? Or
Not really.
It's
Unless
important
anybody-
that Tom get onto the email thread, though.
Sure is.
yes, yes.
Tom, I sent you an email like an hour ago. If you're still having any issues, just contact me. Also, Jason, you posted that you couldn't find the video of the last session. It's on the it's in the messages. There's a link to it.
I got it. I watched it.
Actually, there's a
Okay.
Waging Dialogue YouTube channel now. I think you guys made,
Yes,
and it's
there is
right
a
there.
YouTube channel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good. It's worth watching again. I think just in terms of getting to know the other people that are in the group before we. Yeah.
Yeah, Sandy is definitely involved. She just couldn't
Yeah.
make it today.
Okay.
All right, and then we have another next week. We can try to see what happens this week and pull it together as best we can next.
Okay.
What is it?
Good to meet you all.
Good to
Yeah,
meet
it was
you
nice
too.
meeting you all. Nice getting to know all of you a little bit. Sorry, Paul, we talked so much. We didn't get to know you as well, but
It's all right. We'll go online.
yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
guys.
one.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Alice. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, I can't leave.